If you're a manager and you're working on your coaching skills, you've probably already found that it can be tricky to translate the theory of coaching into a really great coaching moment within your team. You're excited to try it out, and then somehow the conversation just falls flat. And I hear this all the time from my clients. They just say, it just didn't quite go as I anticipated. Well, today I'm sharing with you 3 traps that kill coaching conversations, and more importantly, the smart questions that will help you transform any coaching conversation. In this video here, I walked you through the GROW coaching framework: goal, reality, options, will. I think this is by far the best coaching framework for any manager wanting to develop a stronger coaching style in how they lead. But knowing the framework is just the beginning. The key is knowing how you navigate the conversation, experimenting with different questions until you find out what really works for you and your natural coaching style. And that, I find, is where many managers get stuck. In a recent workshop, I did a poll asking what's the biggest challenge you face when you are practicing your coaching skills, and this came up as the number one. In fact, one manager put it so well. She said, I just start off so well, and then in the moment, I just can't help myself. I give the advice. So jumping straight to the solution and giving advice is coming from a really good place because you want to help and you think you know the answer. Now, you'll know you're doing this if you suddenly hear yourself saying, have you tried? What you should do is, or taking over if there is just a pause in the conversation and starting to lead it yourself. Why it kills a coaching conversation is it takes ownership away from them. And as a consequence, that can make them more dependent on you. As a manager, you can really miss what's really holding them back. So when you catch yourself falling into this trap, here are some great questions you can use instead. I call these the Stay Curious question kit. Instead of saying, have you tried? Change it round to say, what do you think might work? Instead of what you should do is, this is when you need to hold back and say, well, what options could you do? And what else is a brilliant question to help the person to keep exploring. The golden rule when you feel the urge to jump in with advice is to count to 5 and then ask a question instead. You have to remember their 70% solution, but with 100% ownership, beats your 100% solution, but with only 70% ownership. Often when I'm coaching people and I ask what they would like to achieve or what their learning goal is, the first answer that comes back is often very vague. And it normally starts with things like, I'd like to get better at, or I'd like to be more confident in doing whatever it is. And this is a real danger zone for managers because we directionally know what they mean. And it would be really easy to just move on. How you would know that if you are falling into this trap is that the goals that are being described don't have clear success measures, or there's no timeline or specific outcome. You can't really picture what success looks like. Why this kills a coaching conversation is that if you're not clear on the goal, you can't measure progress. You can't plan practice opportunities in the same way. And very easily, the person can feel less accountable because it's all a bit vague. So when someone gives you a woolly goal, this is the time to use these questions. I call these the Get Specific question kit. A brilliant question to use is, paint me a picture. What will you be doing when you can do this well? And this really helps people visualize and bring depth to that goal. Another good question is, how will you know you've cracked it? Or if I was watching you do this brilliantly, what would I see? Now, if people are finding that quite difficult to do, and sometimes people describe a goal and then they find it a bit overwhelming, you can bring it down a little and say, what would be one specific thing that would be different? And then you can focus the coaching conversation around that. Now, if you miss the first 2 traps, already you're going to be making great progress on your coaching conversations. The quality of them will be much better. However, this third trap is the one that I see happen time and time again when I'm in workshops and people are practicing the skills sort of there in front of me. A manager recently told me that they'd spent weeks coaching someone on delegation techniques, and the team member had kept saying, yes, that makes sense, but they never actually delegated anything. And it turns out after quite a while that the real issue wasn't that he didn't know how to delegate. It was that he was worried his team was thinking he was dumping work on them. So what happens, why this doesn't come to the surface, is because people rush through the reality stage without really diagnosing, is it a skill issue, the person doesn't know how to do it, or is it a will issue or a confidence issue? And why this is important is that people can often be quite comfortable talking about skills, but they can be less confident talking about their feelings. So how you would know this was happening is that you move very quickly or straight from the goal to the options. You start solving the problem straight away. You might not understanding what's really and truly holding that person back. And you may be missing the emotional or the confidence blocks that may be there. Why this is so important if you fall into this trap is that it is so easy to develop the wrong solution for the wrong problem. You can't coach confidence in the same way as you would coach someone to develop skills. So when you need to really understand what's holding them back, here's a couple of questions. So this is the dig deeper question kit. The first one is just being really upfront about it and asking the question, is this about not knowing how to do it or knowing how to do it but lacking confidence? And this will really help you develop, is it an issue of skill or is it an issue of will? Another good question is, if I could wave a magic wand and remove one obstacle, what it would be? Why this question works well. It can help people explore their challenges in a really different way. And the third one I use lots in my own coaching with my clients, which is on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you now with this goal? And then you can follow up with, what would it take you to move just 1 point? And why this works really well is you can really understand how far away they feel from the goal, because sometimes you may think, well, they've got all the skills to do this. So it can really open up and be an opportunity to dig down and understand why they think what they think and why they feel what they feel. Another good question in this situation is just the simple, what's the real challenge here for you? And then really importantly, stay quiet, because you need to give them space and let them think. Now, when you're developing your coaching skills, having these questions quickly to hand in this toolkit that you can quickly pull on is really, really helpful. But what we're often trying to do is kind of recall them from our brain. So what I would recommend you do is write some down or screenshot a few of them and then have them close by. So if I were looking for just 3 that will get you out of each of those situations, if you're falling into the advice trap, just think, what else could work? If you're getting vague goals, use the paint me a picture of success. And if you were rushing through reality, just ask what's stopping you. Hold back then, and that will give you an opportunity to open up the conversation again. So as I said, screenshot them, have them on a post-it, just have them nearby so that you build that muscle memory up. Now, one critical thing I've learned after coaching hundreds of managers is these 3 traps don't happen because you don't know the questions. They happen because people are so busy in the day-to-day action that they don't find the space to think and lead. Think about it. Sometimes you just jump to advice because you're time pressed and you need a quick fix. You accept vague goals because you haven't really planned and thought about this person and thought, well, what would good development look like for them? You skip the reality check because you've got a meeting coming up and you want to get onto it. So the real issue is that you're trying to coach without the foundations in place. You see, great coaching doesn't happen in isolation. It happens when you have protected time to actually have these conversations properly. It happens when you have clear development plans for each team member so you know what they're working towards. It happens when you have a good system of follow-up so these conversations connect and build over time. It happens when you have regular planning time to think strategically about your team and not just be reacting to problems. And then think about your own personal development, because one of the things people often say is, I was just so busy, I forgot to do it. And so you need to keep your own personal development front of mind so that you practice these skills, so that coaching becomes a natural part of how you lead your team. And this is why some managers nail coaching and others struggle. It's not about knowing the questions. It's about having a leadership system that makes space for coaching to work. So speaking of having the right systems in place, if you want to stop falling into these coaching traps and start having conversations that actually develop your people, I send out a weekly email with practical leadership strategies that busy managers can actually use. Every week, you'll get one short lesson tied to real situations that you're facing. It's designed for busy managers who want to lead better, but don't have time for lengthy courses. So if this is something that you think you might need, click the link in the description and get this week's lesson, and I will send you my manager's coaching guide as a welcome gift. And if you want to know more about the leadership systems I am talking about, the ones that make coaching conversations like this really work, I'd start with this video. It walks you through exactly how to create protected time to lead and the planning system that transforms reactive managers into brilliant leaders. I'll see you there.